How's it going?
Hi, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How do you pronounce your first name?
Kavya,
Kavya. Nice. Marcus. Nice to meet
nice to meet you. I heard you live in Richmond.
you. I do.
That's awesome. I go to school here. So this
U
this
of R?
yeah, yeah.
Nice, nice. It's nice over there.
Yeah, it's really nice, especially at this time of year too. It's super pretty. Um,
Oh yeah, I bet. All those
are you
trees.
yeah. Are you in Richmond right now?
Yep. In
Uh,
Richmond, we're just kind of on a little break from touring. We leave for uh Amsterdam on Friday.
wow, that's so exciting.
This is just
Well,
incoming.
yeah, yeah. I just want to thank you for making time, even though you guys are on a very hectic tour schedule. It means a lot. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I when I got this project, you guys were the first artist group that I thought of. I was given the task of interviewing a Richmond artist, and I was like, I know Butcher Brown, I know that they, started in Richmond, and so I was really excited about interviewing you guys. So
Boom.
um, all right,
I'm
so
gonna
maybe
go
I
on
can get.
mute and hang out in the background, but this is for her school project, Marcus. So y'all
So no
Rob
cursing?
recorded for her own knowledge, but not necessarily to show the class. It's just sort of like, so that she can pull quotes and everything from it, okay?
Boom. Perfect.
Um,
Um,
Thanks, Marge. Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Also, yeah, you can curse. It's not that serious. Um, but yeah, so I guess to start off, do you mind just giving me like a brief introduction of your group? I know you guys started in Richmond. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that, how some of you guys met, and what you guys have currently or worked on in the past and are currently working on right now.
So my name's Tenny Shoe. I'm from Butcher Brown. Butcher Brown is like a group of music producers who also specialize in different areas of the music industry. Uh, we were working professionals around the Richmond area, and now we kind of move more internationally. So we're always on tour, more or less. But these days, we've been working with Concord Jazz out of, I believe, Beverly Hills, California, and Uh, it's been a great relationship. We have King Butch, we have Solar Music, which is an album that just came out October 6th. And so we have been touring, showing the world this album, showing the songs on that album, and connecting with people and telling them, what was the catalyst cauldron behind this project. So yeah, mouthful.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you said you're working with a Concord Jazz in California now?
California, yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure it's Beverly Hills, but I'm not sure.
so where did you guys first start creating your music? And how has that evolved from there?
So where I started was at VCU in Richmond, Virginia.
Mhm.
I started my actual music career. I think started in a band called Bella Blue, and that's actually where I met DJ Harrison for the first time.
Mhm.
Who plays keys in Butcher Brown, and he's also signed to Stone's Throw Records. Um, Him and I have been playing together ever since, and that's about 20 years ago. And then I think over that time, Devon had been developing a studio and doing DJ Harrison, also the record producer DJ Harrison, but also the audio engineer. He had been developing his studio called Yellowstone Studios, and as you develop a studio, you become friends with different people who do those different jobs, and so he has amassed a very large network of amazing musicians, and some of those musicians are in the city, and that's kind of how Butcher Brown more or less, coalesced that at Yellowstone and into the world thereafter.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I kind of want to dive into the whole VCU origin story a little bit more. Can you tell me what you studied at VCU and maybe even like how you met specific members of your Brown through the VCU program? I read a little bit about VCU jazz program. There was like an article about DJ Harrison. But I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about that.
um, my experience at VCU was I was at VCU for music performance with a concentration in jazz studies.
Mhm.
and I had just been focusing on playing jazz trumpet. At that same time, DJ Harrison was in school for jazz drums, quote unquote. And so that's how our relationship had basically grown over the years because we had been playing in the city around town with different musicians and doing different things in different musical spaces. But then at the same time, when we get up and go to school and be quote unquote serious at the time, we were still hanging out. I played second trumpet in the big band and he played drums. For those not familiar, second trumpet sits right next to the drum set. So I ended up watching him, learn his part, do his thing, kick the whole big band, play drums. And then, you know, through there, I met a lot of the musicians around town, and it all centers around Yellowstone, VCU, and, more or less interactions with DJ Harrison. He also played drums. He also plays drums. So that, everybody needs a drummer. He's in every single musical situation. So it just the connective glue is all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of funny you guys sat next to each other. Um, so when you were at VCU, were there certain venues that you would play at or venues that VCU was affiliated with within the city of Richmond?
Um, there in my early career, Bogarts was the premier venue. It was on Lombardi at the time, and it had been there since the '70s. I had came to school in 2003, and that venue had been there for years. So they had built a whole neighborhood clientele. All the musicians wanted to play there every Friday and Saturday night when all the musicians didn't have other gigs. It was just kind of expected that you go to whoever's playing at Bogarts. And then it turns into this musician party because everyone is there. And then, as time went on, we started playing at venues, uh, playing at Strange Matter, playing at oh man, doing things at the National, doing random different types of performances for places like the Siegel Center, um, all kinds of stuff. It just kind of when I was coming up and going through school around the same time as DJ, there wasn't the musical infrastructure that we have now.
Mm.
So people would just kind of put music wherever they can get it, and a lot of the larger organizations helped out where they could. But it was more underground backyard back then, and so a lot of places were unorthodox as far as music goes. But there were a lot of clubs, Ipanema, but they weren't like they are now.
Yeah, I actually it's great that you bring that up because I was going to ask about it, about what your thoughts are on the Richmond infrastructure for, music for, I guess, smaller, more independent artists. Like, do you think that the Richmond infrastructure supports smaller artists on their come up, or is it more of kind of harder to break through the noise? I know you said that it was more backyardy kind of when you were in college. What do you think of that development over time?
I think that Richmond. Well, to clarify, I say backyard. I mean, like, I think that musicians in particular in Richmond have always been insane.
Yeah.
And I think that, things like I seen in the news, a new 7,500 seat amphitheater, I think is going to become a thing. But I think things like that are great. And I think they're way long overdue because there's so many great musicians and great people who do so many great things in Richmond. And in my opinion, it goes way overlooked. Um, but I think that it's a good thing as long as there's always an on ramp for someone starting at zero. I think when a city has too many skyscrapers, they forget about the people that live on the ground floor. And like that concept is not just a literal metaphor. It's an actual. I think that if you put too much into something and you let it grow to a place where it can scale and commercialize, that's all well and good, but you have to make sure you get the handicap ramp for those who are as capable. It's and I think that's where we get lost. And that's a lot of the reason why a lot of people around here don't want the commercialization of things is because they see that on-ramp disappearing almost immediately. But I think it could work as long as there's an effort to make sure that's in there, especially for the musicians that are here, because there's a lot of killers here as far as musicians go, and engineers, singers, songwriters, bass players, drummers. There's a ton of great musicians here. And I
Yeah.
think it would be great to have infrastructure that really supported that.
So do you think that Richmond as a city is kind of moving into that commercialization now? And do you see it becoming an issue for smaller artists now?
I think Richmond is moving into that space. Um, Unfortunately for Richmond, we have senior members of the music industry in Richmond who I don't think will allow things to go too awry, just because Richmond is a family-oriented city, and a lot of the things that were built up were built off of family. So a lot of people know each other. A lot of people built relationships. I think that those people won't allow things to go too crazy too fast. But I do think the city is moving toward a more commercialized state where there's, bigger industry, bringing, they're talking about this casino thing that, just traveling all over the world. I've seen what casinos do to places, and
Yeah.
it just kind of up to another level, which may or may not be a good thing, but just the fact that that's an option is different than it was,
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that when Butcher Brown was kind of getting started in the industry, do you think that Richmond facilitated your success in that aspect? Do you think you guys entered the industry at the right time, where you could see that growth? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think Richmond is one of the main reasons why Butcher Brown exists in the first place. I think that there has been a lack of music infrastructure for a number of decades, but I think that has fortified us into musicians that go and hunt versus musicians that are kind of left with whatever comes in the wind. And I think that spirit and that mentality has seeped into the music. It's allowed us to kind of fuse different areas of music together that some purists would say don't belong together, but it's also allowed us to look at our brand and reframe the way we present ourselves business wise so that we can do cool stuff like get better returns, have much more effective tours, make records that people really want to listen to. They really want to, show to their friends and their family, and they really think that this other person would think that's cool, because I think that's so important.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that you mentioned a kind of fusion of genres within your music, and I read a little bit about how it's like kind of funk, jazz, hip hop, neo soul, kind of all mixed into one. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because all of your members had different backgrounds in music and you were able to meld those interests, or was it, a shared interest of all these genres?
I honestly, I believe that state is a symptom of of our desire to pay our rent with our musical ability. We decided that we were going to force the musical persona no matter what. So that meant, if I had to go play trumpet with a bluegrass band, a music that I frankly was not familiar with the first time I played with an organization like that, I still took it anyway. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn what's going on. I'm going to put myself in this water because I need this rent money, but also I need to learn this. This is a musical organization that does this and does that. They do different things that I do, and because of that, I've developed relationships with people all over the place in different musical settings. And I think for me personally, it forced me to step outside of my comfort zone and really get in tune with what music is, not just what hip hop or jazz or whatever I'm familiar with is. And I think as a band, it has forced us to. It allowed everyone to come to the table with so many skill sets that we can detach ourselves from our specialties. We can say we're producers who specialize in these instruments, so we can do things that an instrumentalist generally won't do. They won't allow other people who play the same instrument to come in and perform on the same record because this is their space. But since we can detach ourselves from our specialties due to the fact that we spent so much time being in different situations, we can work with people that generally you wouldn't work with if you're in a certain space. So it just gives us more options all across the board. And I think it has definitely helped us in the long run and the short run.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was really curious about that when I listened to your guys' music. I hear so many different influences, so I was, wondering where that came from. So that context is really helpful. I'm curious to also know if having your foot in kind of all of those doors in terms of genre helps your marketing, or does it make it a little bit more difficult to kind of hone in and tell people what your craft is? I'm wondering how that informs the way that your group is marketed to your audience.
It well, I think it affects the marketing positively and negatively at the same time. I think positively it gives us more options because with these different sounds we can conjure different images, different colors. We can talk to our folks with different abilities, and they can find different things in these sounds to pull from when it comes time to market the product. But negatively, it does make it difficult for traditional marketing practices because it's just a bunch of different stuff together, which it may be difficult for traditional folks, but I think that it has posed a challenge for our team as a whole. And I think that our team has just kind of decided that we're just going to make it do what it does. We're going to find a way to make it cool to who's listening to it, and we're going to take the time to figure out what's working, what's not, what comes off this way, what this color does, how these people, listen to what the people are saying. And I think doing all that will allow us to come up with a marketing picture that will work long term. But it's just, since it's a new beast, a thing that is unique in its own right, I think that it's just going to take a little more time to come up with a cohesive marketing scheme that matches the quality of the actual music.
Yeah, that's really great insight. Thank you for providing that. I'm also curious about if having all of these different kind of genres in your music makes your audience way more spread out in terms of demographic and interests and stuff like that. Have you guys looked into the analytics of all of it?
Yes, we look in. I think Corey and I, and probably Morgan, are the ones who really pour over the analytics in secret. I really look at those a lot, and I also, as being the front man, I look at the audience and try to really gauge how these songs are hitting people, and then like bring the information back to the group later so we can formulate set lists and song vibe and things like that. But I think that it does big time. The way that we've crafted the sound has absolutely made a very, very large resting place for people who like the vibes that we put out. And it's getting to a place where our shows are more or less improvised. Everybody knows the songs. Everybody knows what all the essential parts that they have to perform on the songs are. But as far as what the sections are going to sound like, the way we're going to play the notes, the way we're going to phrase, that's all improvised. So I think that allowing ourselves to be free like that on stage makes people feel comfortable. It takes a lot of prep and it takes a long time to really get your skills to that level, but I think it allows the people in the audience to be comfortable, and that comfort is something people are looking for right now. And I think that they all gravitate toward that because we've been fortunate enough to go all over the United States, went to Europe a couple years ago, and we've also had some internet things that have kind of spread their tentacles all over the place. And I think that the response that we've gotten is definitely, this is for everyone. That's kind of also why we decided to go with the title solo music, is because of that very thing too, is the wideness of the audience footprint.
Yeah, that's got to be a great feeling too. Everyone knowing all the songs that you're about to play on stage.
That is, it's definitely foreign for me. I'm just kind of like, man, this is wild. Like people in the audience singing songs that I wrote, like when I was living in an attic.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I help, I'm play, help do this, and like did that on this one, but people know the words and they really know the records and they really came to be in their vibe, which is insane.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is this kind of the first tour where you guys are seeing that, or has this happened in the past before?
I think this is the first tour that we're seeing that response of we're pretty familiar beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the last Europe tour that we did, we sold out over 90% of the shows, which was good. I think a lot of people were still in the I like the way the records sound, but I want to hear how they sound live
Mm.
phase. And I think now we're at the point where everyone we talk to has seen us somewhere before, and they're coming back to get the second vaccine dose. The second jab, as they say on the BBC, which I always have running in the car when I take my daughter to school. Second jab.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess the live component is very important to your guys' sound. How important is that in the actual production process of making these songs?
I think that the live portion is important in the production process for a few different reasons. One, I think it's important because we don't want to make something that we can't represent live deep down. Now, I don't know if that's a principle that's like across the board, monolithic in Butcher Brown, or that's just how I personally feel.
Hmm.
Um, but we definitely want to try to make things that we can recreate and that make sense live. And I think that um, the another way is that we kind of treat it like the weather. We look at the past shows and see how these types of grooves, these types of vibes affected people, and then we use that making songs going forward. So like we've noticed on some tours that people are kind of afraid and apprehensive to dance because we've generally been playing in jazz clubs, and they kind of tell you before the set to turn your phone off and keep your conversations to a minimum. So that automatically makes it seem like you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So we kind of want to get away from that. So we started getting more into house music, like music that is
Ooh.
infectious and it makes you want to dance no matter where you're at. You're like, I think just that turning that danceability up is a that was a reflection of we noticed these people were being tamped down, but we want to bring them up. We don't want you to turn yourself off. We want you to turn yourself up. You're in here, you're special just like us. We need your vibe just like you need ours. And so, we try to make music that made it so that people would forget about the announcer at the beginning and they would just dance anyway. It's like, yes, that's the vibe.
That's great. So you guys kind of shifted away from the kind of slow jazz vibe and more towards upbeat stuff just simply by seeing the audience's reactions to it.
Right, yeah, yeah, because I think that since we improvise on stage, the emotional reactions that we bring out in people from on the stage, we're affected just as much by their reaction to it. When
Yeah.
we see that they're really into it, that's going to change the way the music is. If they're sitting down barely like PGA golf clapping, then like you know we're not gonna be we're not gonna be on 11, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it but we long term we try to take that same information and say, well, I noticed that these shows on this tour, this vibe was here, that vibe's here. We already have like 5 records that we planned out just based on different grooves that we got to in specific shows that everybody kind of freaked out about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that to me is a path worth walking down. You know?
That's super exciting. I mean, I'm personally looking forward to hearing all of those records as well.
Yeah.
Um, I have a couple more questions for you if you have
Oh
time.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so what is your kind of, I guess, most well-performing music in general? And would you say that is the same, or does it differ from your favorite kind of music to make for Butcher Brown?
I think it's the same
Hmm.
for the most part, just because I think that Butcher the level of musicianship that is in Butcher Brown, I think that we're the type of musicians that we will find a way to make whatever it is enjoyable.
Hmm.
And I think that's the key to doing a lot of different things. It's just like, just find a way to make it cool, so that way you don't have to suffer through it. And if you don't like it, if we don't like the groove or we don't like the song, we'll switch it up into something that we do like. And we try to make it so good that like it's cool, it works.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, we're in there. So we try to really study and really learn things on the depth, on a level that brings out the depth and the resonance of the actual DNA of what the sounds are. So that way we can make it into what makes us feel good. So we can make the people we're performing for feel good, and just the cycle continues.
That's great. I mean, I've talked to a lot of artists that there is a disconnect between what they really like to make and what actually does well for them. And so it's nice to see that you guys have been able to do both at the same time. That's really exciting.
That's definitely a music school advantage right there.
Yeah, if you have the talent, it's just everyone's gonna enjoy it some way or another.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have any specific venues in Richmond that you really enjoy playing at? I know you guys are on tour and you had a couple of spots in Richmond or a couple of dates in Richmond as well. Where do you guys like to perform the most?
Um. I would say my favorite spots to perform at in Richmond are the Camel, the National, and Dogwood Dell.
Hmm.
I think Dogwood Dell is a really cool space, open space. I don't think Butcher has played in all three of those places. Butcher, I think the general consensus is we like the Camel for the sound system and the vibe in there. We all been performing in there forever.
Mhm.
We're about to play the Broadberry on the day after Thanksgiving. I haven't played the Broadberry in a long time, so
That's
I'm looking
exciting.
forward to getting back in there. I like that place too.
Yeah,
So I have a handful of spots. I also really like the Dark Room, but I'm not sure if they still have music.
I've heard about the
Um,
dark room. I'll have to look into that.
Savory Grain is also another good spot for music, but
Okay.
that spot's too small for Butcher. You have the Stampede in there.
Well, that's a pretty exciting thing to be able to say. Um,
For sure. I love that room, and I wish Butcher could play in that intimate setting like that. But,
yeah.
it is what it is.
So was kind of those bigger venues like the National, was that kind of I guess a goal of Butcher Brown when you guys were first starting out?
For sure, yeah. I mean, we spent so much time watching, like, Herbie Hancock, watching uh, Weather Report, watching Jimi Hendrix, watching Miles Davis, all of these giant artists perform on these giant stages with you have a band that's A-list, you have a production crew that's A-list, you have a venue staff that's A-list, and everything is really thought out, really put together, and it makes a nice, comfortable experience for the artist. And you can just focus on being an artist and being a musician or being whatever it is you came to do. And the people can really sense your relaxation, and they can really be entertained in the way that they're paying to be entertained. Because it don't really work if you walk out there stressed out and, like, they come to be entertained and you're stressed out. You're sending the wrong vibe. They could get stressed out at work. They want to
Yeah.
come here to kick it. So I think seeing that those big venues operate the way they do, and they operate kind of like a business, and you understand why it's important to make money as a musician. Um, it was definitely a goal to jump in those rooms and to perform in places like that, like the Hollywood Bowl, Greek
Yeah.
Theater. We had the pleasure to do all those big rooms like that, and that's a blessing in itself, because a lot of great feet have walked on those stages, and I'm glad to say mine are two of them that have joined the club.
That's so exciting. Um, I have like one more question,
Oh
and
yeah.
wrap this up. Do you think that Richmond has a sound in terms of if there's a specific genre or, type of music that comes out of Richmond most often? Or do you think it's kind of a mesh of everything? And do you think Butcher Brown encapsulates that sound if there is one?
I think Richmond does have a sound overall. I think Richmond, as well as many different types of music powerhouses, they also have their own sound. Richmond has a nice music sound. That sound, I think, is due to a lot of the great engineers that hang out and do a lot of great stuff and help a lot of great people around here. I think Butcher Brown captures one aspect of that sound. It's like, you know, one star. Butcher Brown is to the Richmond sound as you know, our sun is to the galaxy, because there's so many different people that just have decided to be good at what they do, and they just want to focus on that, and they live here. And you know, after traveling the whole world, I see that it actually is pro level. Whether they know it or not, that's another story. But just knowing that there's so many different musicians and people here, I equate everything to musicians just because that's what I am. But I mean, like, people just in general, from carpentry to, you know, whatever. They're all great people, and I think that it's, you know, Butcher Brown captures that sound, that way of doing things. Our restaurants taste a certain way. Our art looks a certain way. Our streets look a certain way. Our leaves fall on the ground a certain way. And I think we're honored to represent that sound in any space. But there's a lot of people really representing that sound, and I think it's very great to have it in the world. It's necessary. But yeah, the Richmond sound is strong and vibrant. Yeah,
That's a really, really great answer. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
If you had any more thoughts, feel free to share. But I do thank you for your time, and
Absolutely.
yeah, this was a really great experience and super helpful for me. And yeah, I'm really excited to share this with my professor. He's gonna be so impressed.
Nice. Please tell him I said hey. And,
I
you know,
will. Yeah,
thanks for
I'm
the
not sure.
interview.
You're really good. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was cool. Keep interviewing musicians.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was
Thank
really
you. I
good.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
for having me.
yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you have a great rest of your tour and a great rest of your day as well.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Feel free to email any follow-up questions you need.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. That'll be helpful. All right.
Oh, take it easy.
Bye. You too.